Mehdi Hasan reflecting on his time in the loony bin. You know, I'm curious. I'm curious. A lot of respect for the guy. I did see a little bit of it on my own time, a little bit of his debate. I mean, I debate, right? The 1v20. You know, I think for the most part, like I said, it's pretty worthless. Like a lot of these people are beneath debate. They don't deserve debate. They don't deserve for their ideas to be taken seriously or really engaged with. They deserve to be like re-educated. How are we doing, man? Also, have to say, I've seen it before, but they're really playing it up right now. He has a phenomenal exasperation face. He really does. He's got it's the I don't know if it's like the prominence of the eyelids or the shape of the eyebrow, but it's very, very well communicated, you know? It's very clear.
Let's just jump straight into it because we've got half an hour.
Hello.
There's several hundred of you, and there's already a lot of questions. Let's just jump straight into it because we've got half an hour. There's several hundred of you, and there's already a lot of questions in the chat.
Hello.
Let's see. Let's start with, okay, a good, easy. Barry Price says, how did you feel as you were attacked by these people? I didn't feel great, Barry. I'll be honest with you. It's not easy to put a brown Muslim immigrant into a room full of white supremacists and then expect to...
Jubilee kept the tame shit. Apparently it got really racist. Yeah, because Jubilee is a right-wing organization. They cut it for the benefit of right-leaning people. If you go there and it's like a right-wing versus left-wing thing, they will structure it to maximize the watchability, the zeal. And the fact is that for the kinds of people who watch Jubilee 1v20s, they're more interested in seeing like the right-leaning argument expressed in the most coherent, cohesive way. But you can't play too much into the left-leaning side because they're the correct one. You know, you have to create that impression of balance. In truth, 99% of right-leaning discourse is just open hatred, you know? If you take a look at the way Nazis behave when they go on Jubilee and they're like, I'm just concerned about the demographic replacement, You go on Stormfront and they're like, N-word, N-word, N-word. Like that's, even showing them how they act like when they have the cameras on them, it's like you're doing them a favor, right? Because the reverse isn't the case. You take a look at like left-wing circles, and what do you see? Like in internal discussion, polyamory and policy wonkery, and people arguing over what exact interpretation of Marx is correct. You don't see the equivalent, you know? Whatever sort of jovially problematic characteristics the left exhibits, they exhibit it in public too. But the left is duplicitous by their nature.
Have to deal with that stuff. Look, I love to argue and debate. Those of you who know me know I love to argue, debate. I literally wrote a book on it. It's one of the reasons I agreed to do it.
You mean the right? Yeah, the right. Whatever I said, if it's mean to right-leaning people, that's what I meant to say.
It's like, oh, me versus 20. I like those odds. But I didn't expect this much open abuse, racist abuse to my face. Like, this is the America we live in now. One of the useful things that comes out of this debate is you can see for yourself what is out there now. We're not making this stuff up. This is the America we live in now. In Trump's America, people are emboldened to say stuff they would never dare say in public 5 or 10 years ago, certainly not 15 or 20 years ago. People saying things to my face. Yeah, Barry, it wasn't great. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think we should. I always say this, like Muslims, brown people, immigrants, black people. We're not born with thicker skins than everyone else. So, of course, it hurts. Of course, it's upsetting. I don't want people to know that they're getting under my skin. But racist abuse is something we shouldn't normalize or think is okay as part of a debate. So, no, it wasn't great. But, you know, I know how to hit back.
It shouldn't be normalized, but light should be shown on it, for sure. And that's why it frustrates me. It's so dishonest to, like, pretend that right-leaning people's grievances are rooted in some kind of academic disagreement or fact-based disagreement, when overwhelmingly it's just animosity. You know? Why are the Jubilee comments mostly from left-wingers? Because I think that overwhelmingly it's just very difficult to be right-leaning and to look good in any kind of direct confrontation. Like, what do they say? Reality has a liberal bias, I guess? Sure, left-leaning bias, whatever you want to take from that. But it doesn't change the fact that this is an effort to launder them, right? Let me put it this way, okay? If Jubilee is a cultural project that favors the right, you know, you get this outcome. If Jubilee was a cultural project that was genuinely neutral, it would be regarded widely as like the greatest possible denunciation of conservative thought in existence, and no conservative would want to go on there. The fact of the matter is, the only reason conservatives are willing to be baited into these interactions is because Jubilee is favorable to them. But I don't think that's acceptable. Why, if the only way like these debates can be structured and set up is if you're willing to lie to benefit the right-leaning people, then why are we doing this, you know?
Harder than most people do. So I was able to kind of take some of these people down and turn the tables on them and throw some of it back in their faces. But look, it's not pleasant. Josephine Olsen says, I was so impressed with your quick recall of good arguments. Thank you very much. I'm one of those guys who like crams for exams. So I'm night before, I'm imbibing everything. If you ask me now to say again what I said on when I taped that, I probably couldn't remember, to be honest. This is, let's keep going through these. Have we got, JH asks, did you fear for your safety being there? A lot of us viewers were nervous seeing the vitriol in some of the participants' eyes. I did, and I took security with me. And unfortunately, the world we live in now is, when we do public events, we have to have security. Unfortunately, journalists now are targeted, judges are targeted, activists are targeted, politicians are targeted, members of Congress are having their security budgets out. We live in America always was a violent country, a heavily armed country. We now live in a country where the president of the United States and some of his media acolytes are inciting violence all the time. So unfortunately, you shouldn't have to fear for your safety in a televised debate in a TV studio. But look, it would be ridiculous not to worry. I mean, did you guys see the second guy? I think his name's Richie. He's been tweeting at me for the past couple of days. Second or third guy in the green T-shirt, appropriate green T-shirt, acting like the Hulk. He was like, I have this thing where if I get mad, I just have to stay calm. That's a weird thing to say. I was sitting there thinking, okay, this is going to be a very interesting 2 hours. Like the second or third guy who's come to sit opposite me has warned me that he's not allowed to lose his temper. Where am I?
A friend of me pointed this out to me, and I think it's so prescient, it's so correct, which is that when left-leaning people look weird in a public setting at a protest or they're a content creator or something, they're doing it on purpose. The way they style their hair, the way they dress, like they're trying to look deliberately deviant or deliberately like countercultural. But when right-leaning people do the opposite, they try to look normal and they fail miserably. You see a bunch of right-leaning content creators and they look like a freak show, you know, but they're all trying to look normative. They're trying to look like just guys, but it's just they always look weird, you know. So the hatred inside of them is emanating like a aura, you know.
Oh, yes, it wasn't great. And sadly, we have to kind of take these measures of security. Charlie Henderson asks, I've read Win Every Argument, but generally, how the hell do you keep that many facts, dates, and statistics just at the ready like that? There's no way you could have predicted how unhinged they immediately got. Yet it felt as if you had a response for everything. So, Charlie, just to expand on what I said. One thing is I'm very good at cramming and prepping last minute. Even when I was a student in school and college, I was the night before guy. I was the guy who would be looking at my notes as I walked into the examination hall just to kind of have the immediate recall. Obviously, I'm older and grayer now. The memory isn't as good as it was, but I do cram a lot of stuff in. That's one thing. Two is I live and breathe this stuff. So, a lot of it was already there because I've debated this stuff for years. And three, response for everything. Unfortunately, for my sins, I spend a lot of time watching what the far right say. I watch Fox. I read right-wing sites. I'm familiar with their arguments. So
agonizing, genuinely agonizing. I legitimately do not have the character for this. I feel like I've basically gotten the gist of the right-leaning argumentative style, the way it shifts on a dime to make a new point that's contradictory to the previous one if it's politically expedient. I just constantly engaging with it, Used to? Yeah, and then I got sick of it. I spent like several years doing it more aggressively, and now I feel like a guy. And in fairness, it's not that difficult to know what right-leaning people are going to say. They're not that complicated, You
may have noticed there were moments where I clocked things very quickly because I know these people. I know where I didn't know those specific people. Jubilee picked those people, not Zateo, obviously not me. I just turned up as a participant. But I clocked those types of people. So when the Hulk guy was like, well, there's a genocide, I'm like, you're white genocide guy. When the guy with the baseball cap who wanted me out, who pretended he was an economist till I called him out, when he said, well, I'm being replaced. You're a great replacement guy. When our fascist friend was quoting General Franco, I was like, you're a fascist. It's very clear. I mean, the Franco debate goes back to the 1960s.
Oh, it froze, but I'm also pausing it. When did you last actively research them out of interest? Genuine question. I'm not trying to respond to your question with a snarky question myself. I'm genuinely curious. what conservative talking points right now do you think deserve research? I actually mean that. Like, what aren't the most obvious, cynical, low IQ, immediate, like reflexive defense of anything Trump is doing? Because my thoughts right now is that there aren't any. I genuinely can't think of any. Now, there are lots of things that I think deserve research, right? Like, for instance, I've always been really interested in policy wonkery when it comes to urban planning, the exact ways you can kind of manage. Oh, another big thing that I'm interested in, demographics, right? The birth rate. You know, even though you guys get mad at me when I talk about it, I think it's a really interesting conversation that I've read a decent amount on. I'm curious about, like, well, why aren't people having children? What can we do to make people's lives better so they feel comfortable having children? What makes people happy? Stuff like that. I think these questions are really interesting, you know? But these are also not the questions that right-leaning people are asking, and they're not the conversations they want to have. I tried having a conversation on the birth rates, the declining birth rates with a conservative like 2 or 3 years ago, and he was just so openly anti-reality. Like, his only position was that we need to revoke women's rights. Like, so at that point, you're not even having the policy discussion. Now you're just having a discussion about whether or not revoking women's rights fixes the birth rate crisis, which, spoiler alert, it doesn't. The birth rates have been going down even in countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran. It's happening everywhere, even countries where women are second-class citizens. So, no, it's not that. Yeah. So I just don't know what warrants research. I want to know more about the world, I guess, and how to fix problems. But that's just not what the right. That's just not what the debates are about, you know.
Because I've been following this stuff for a long time, that's why partly I have a response for a lot of this stuff. But I appreciate you reading the book. And as I say in the book, preparation is key. And I did a lot of preparation for the Jubilee debate. Even though my opponents did not, clearly.
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share.
All right, you charmer, you. Okay. All right, there you go.
And subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to Zateo.com and subscribe now.
Which I recommend you guys do. Zateo is genuinely one of the best sources of information that you can engage with right now. Will we do research streams and this kind of policy wonkery stuff sometime? Maybe. Chat gets mad at me when I talk about the birth rate stuff because people like project a lot of their personal psychoses onto it, which is exactly what the right does, just in a more sinister way, right? When the right talks about the birth rates, what they're really talking about is the fact that they don't have a trad wife who will bear their children. It's really just an expression of their personal desire to control women. And for a lot of people on the left, I think that they read into the conversation a more sinister, like, are you trying to revoke women's rights kind of conversation? Which obviously no, and that's objectively not a solution anyway. So, you know, and even if that was a solution, I wouldn't accept it. You know, even if it was provable that you could manage the demographic crisis by restricting women's rights, I wouldn't advocate for it. But yeah, I don't know. People have a more limited appetite for that sort of thing. But I am curious about it.
Supporting fearless, independent journalism.
Hasnain Yarkhan says, you've interviewed world leaders and debated policies for years. How did this experience on Surrounded, facing openly fascist individuals, compare in terms of emotional and intellectual challenge? What a great question, Hasnain. Well, first of all, it's very different. Even if they hadn't all been freaks and loons, these are quote unquote ordinary people. Actually, many of them turned out to be kind of online influencers. But it was pitched to me as, ordinary people. These were not politicians. These are not people in power.
Because they fucking lie. Yeah, because Jubilee always does this. They say, like, yeah, we're going to bring ordinary people on, so it's like representative in some way. And then they get like 20 insane right-wing micro-influencers who are desperate for their fame. Every single one of them then posts their section of the clip online to get like as many accolades as possible. They're not ordinary people. Wannabe influencers don't act the same way ordinary people do.
The kind of people I interview for a living. So just as a general rule of thumb, you have to adjust your style of debate, right? You're dealing with members of the public, not people in power. So your tone, your style has to be very different. You try not to come across as patronizing, although halfway through the debate, I kind of lost that. There's no way you could not patronize some of these people who are so dumb in the things they say. You'll remember the woman who came up to me and said that you can't be an American and an immigrant, and then revealed that her parents are Americans who were immigrants. Anyways, so sometimes you do end up being patronizing. But yes, the experience was very different. As Charlie just mentioned, there was a sense of slightly foreboding and insecurity and fear because these people Is one of them a nut job, which you don't feel when you're interviewing politicians? Emotionally, yes, it was a lot more emotional because A, they were very personally abusive, and that's not great. B, I'm thinking all the way through that I have kids. I have friends and family in this country. I live here. I've been here 10 years. I've been an American citizen for 5 years. This is our country. These are the people who are our neighbors, people in our workplaces, people in the grocery store aisle. That's what was so scary and emotionally disturbing about the surrounded experience. And again, I'm waiting to see those of you who criticize me for doing it. I'm sure some of you...
It is a little non-representative too, of course, because again, the way these like micro wannabe influencers behave is so different to the way real people behave. These micro-conservative influencers are desperately trying to claw themselves to the top in an environment where the people who lie the most aggressively and with the most performative cruelty are the ones who get the most attention. So they are like incentivized to play up every negative tendency. Like it's literally vice signaling. Like they approach this from the perspective of like, okay, so maybe the cucked rhino neocons like Bush might say something like, you know, anyone can become American. I don't think that. Actually, I think only purebred whites can be American. And then like you escalate from there. Well, I can. Oh yeah. Well, you think only purebred whites can be American? Well, I think that everyone who isn't a purebred white isn't even just non-American. They're not even people, man. Like, it sounds like a joke or an overstatement, but this is legitimately what goes on in these circles. Like, they try to they out vice signal each other. That's the performance. That's what they're trying to do. Regular conservatives, for the most part, like normal people who are not trying to make a name for themselves, don't do that as much. There are still plenty of pieces of shit out there in that field, but they're not as likely to be like that.
Wish I hadn't done it, and I'm on the fence myself as to whether it was a good or bad thing to have done. But one reason it was a good thing to have done is it exposed a lot of these people. It wakes people up to, these are some of the people in the United States right now. This is 20, 30, 40% of the public. I don't know what percentage you want to put on it, but it's a very loud, vocal, and growing minority.
I think this is good, by the way. I do think that shining a light on this is good, especially when contrasted against somebody of great respectability. Like, that being said, it is that Jubilee cut out the more obviously racist shit that they said and did, because that makes them look so much worse. You know? Like, that's what I mean. Like, if the goal of going on there is to show just how bad and detached from reality these people are, it doesn't help that the collaborationist platform is hiding the most obvious examples of them being evil and out of touch. Where can we see or read about the insanely racist shit they said? I mean, I believe that he talks about it to an extent here, but he's also alluded to it, the fact that there was more bad stuff that was cut. Also, one of the people who didn't even talk to Mehdi literally posted on Twitter, I didn't go up because he smelled bad. And he had a t-shirt that was the AI Ghibli image of the woman who said the hard R to a black 10-year-old or something. Like, we're talking about people who have no political ideology outside of being hateful. Nazis who don't even believe in Nazism because they think it'll make their lives better, but because being the most performatively hatred as possible, like, they think that's their ticket to fame. These are freaks, okay? But obviously, like, Jubilee, if they lean into this too much and show the truth, they might not have right-leaning people come on.
So that emotionally affected me, Hasnan, to think about this.
Oh, apparently he said here he actually did come up and it was so insane it all got cut. Yeah, because, again, collaborationist.
When I left there and, you know, drove home with my colleague and the security, we talked in the car about, like, what is America effed? Like, what is the future of America if these are some of the young people in there? Let's keep going. Let's have a look and see. Imran Kukdawala says, I sound like your mum, but man, I was worried about you as I listened to those people spewing venom from their mouths. I just want to ask, were you able to sleep that night? Yes, I went out for a great Chinese meal in LA that night. Actually, it was a great Uyghur meal with our friends, the Uyghur Muslims, that evening, and had a good time with friends and family and ate lots of ice cream. So I'm always able to sleep well after ice cream. Let's keep going. Oz Hack says, this was quite the show. Your performance was extraordinary. Thank you, Oz. Has this reached audience who don't usually see you or other liberal media? I don't mean lost because crazy people.
Oh, for sure, man. I'm pretty sure the Jubilee video of his debate, the 1v20, has like 7-8 million views at this point. It's gotten infamous. And overwhelmingly, I think it's supportive of Mehdi Hasan, which is the reason why I came around on my, like, you know, him going on Jubilee. I don't think left-leaning people should go on in general. I think with him it works, both because he's like the best, and also because his respectability is contrasted, right? If you have like an edgy blood sports lefty stream debater type like me or whatever go on there, it's all just shit flinging, you know? Oh, the left versus the right, blah, 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 blah. But he comes across as like, despite being an incredibly seasoned debater, he comes across as somebody who is above it all enough that he can be shocked by how bad they are.
But people in the middle who may realize that political insouciance is costly. How do you measure who it has reached, and how do you further that type of reach? Will you see you on a Joe Rogan type platform? So a lot of questions there. Look, it's a good question. One of the reasons I did it, and people have said, why would you do this show? What did you achieve? I don't know what I achieved. That's something that will take time to really work out. But one reason I did it is because I'd watched Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, all these right-wing shock jocks do surround it. I watched very few progressives have done it. Destiny, if you can call him a progressive, he's certainly not in Gaza, had done it to defend the Democratic Party. Sam Cedar, my good friend from the Majority Report, he did it. And Sam advised me to do it. He said, you should do it. It's a whole new audience. To go back to Oz's question, you do reach people you're not going to reach before. I mean, this is, for those of you, I don't know how many of you on the call are 30, 40, 50. I'm in my 40s. People who are in their teens, they watch Jubilee Media. My kid said to me, Jubilee. My niece said to me, Jubilee, you should do it. And I was listening to people saying, oh, wow, this is a really big thing. Since the show came out this week, I've had multiple people tell me, my kids have been watching this. My kids have been asking me, do I know you? It's a huge young audience. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that young people in America are all watching Jubilee, young people...
It's probably not a good thing. But, you know.
Around the world, that's a different debate. But the reality is it has a huge audience. I mean, it's already, as I say, 7 million views, and that's just on YouTube. So for me, I want to go where audiences are at, within reason. But I do want to go where audiences are. I've never been of the journalism school of thought that says, you know, I just want to preach to the converted. I just want my own little small echo chamber. You remember that phrase, if a tree falls in a wood and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a noise? And I always wonder about that phrase. Like, I can do great journalism, great monologues, great interviews, write great articles, but if no one hears or sees or reads them, what impact are you having? I became a journalist to have impact on the world, not to sign up to a purity test, not to feel good about myself, not to get rah, rah, rah from a crowd of like-minded people. And to have impact, you got to go and get big audiences. It's one of the reasons I joined MSNBC. It was a mainstream platform that I didn't agree with everything about that channel, but it gave me a huge mainstream platform. And one of the reasons I did Surrounded was to reach a lot of young people who would never have heard.
He's so good, man. Oh, he's fantastic. He's great. He's so good. Yeah, he's fantastic, man.
Of Zateo, and never have heard of my arguments. Forget Zateo, forget promoting this media organization that I've built, but the arguments that I care deeply about: the Constitution, civil liberties, human rights, immigration, Gaza. Those arguments, it was worth making. I probably didn't get through to most people, certainly didn't get through to anyone in that room. But I do hope, to quote Oz, you know, the people in the middle who are watching, I hope they saw it and thought, wow, the right
Jubilee didn't pay him to get a better internet connection, or like better laptop from which to live stream. Tragic. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if like the value of his going on there had nothing to do with the actual points made and everything to do with the way he held frame against those people. Because that's the narrative, right? I haven't really seen people talking about his arguments, because what arguments are there to make against Nazis? Like, seriously, you can sit down and talk about, like, no, all of your problems aren't caused by Jews. Let's look at the evidence. It's never, these people are beneath argument. It's more about, like, tone, I guess, or how obviously bad they are, you know? Like, and for this, I think, you know, he's very good.
Arguments really are bullshit. Mehdi really exposed it. That's my hope. Karen D says, what would you say or do differently? What would I say differently? I don't think I would have said much differently. I just watched it back. I think what I said, I stand by what I said. Maybe I wouldn't have been going all the way through if I'd known what I was going up against. I literally was stunned in some moments. And apologies if
being stunned benefits you in this case, I think.
If it's the connection isn't great. I am on vacation using vacation Wi-Fi to come to you all. I hope you could all hear me. But what would I do differently? Well, I wouldn't be as surprised if I'd known what I was going to. I genuinely was surprised by just how extreme they were. Would I have done the show had I known what I know now. That I don't know. And I think I definitely would have leaned towards maybe thinking twice about doing it, because I'm not someone who sits down with fascists or racists. I said this in the Jubilee show. I said, I don't debate fascists. People say to me, why don't you have X or Y on your show? And I say, election deniers or climate change. I don't have them on my show. You may notice I love a good argument. But when I wrote Win Every Argument, I said this in the book, good faith argument matters. Reality-based arguments matter. So there's no point just doing
That shit's gotta suck nowadays. Oh man, that's the whole right wing now.
arguments for clickbait. And that's what this turned into in some ways. But again, in my own defense, I had no idea. If they'd told me you're going to be sit down with a fascist, I'd have said, no thanks, I'll pass.
Wait, does he not see Israeli apologists as fascists? There's a difference between people who believe fascist things, which in my opinion makes them a fascist, and people who self-identify as fascists. It's a very critical difference. There are lots of people, liberal, neoconservative, whatever, who are broadly ideologically consistent, but some of their beliefs are fascistic. The whole range of an ideology a person might have, it's often contradictory, right? There are lots of people who have a fascist belief. For example, liberals in their defense of Zionism and Israel right now, I'd say this very... You could credibly call that like a fascistic belief, given what Israel's doing right now, like your defense, much in the same way that I would argue that unapologetic defense of Rhodesia, back in its time, would be a fascistic belief. Whatever example you prefer. But that's not the same as arguing with somebody who self-identifies as a fascist. A person who self-identifies as a fascist, a person who considers themselves one, is on a whole different level when it comes to their ability to be reached. I guess to put it another way, it is possible for a liberal to be reached on many issues. Possible, not likely, but possible. Anyone who's willing to self-describe as a fascist, you will never reach them. You will never sit down across from them and have a good faith conversation. They have consciously adopted a worldview that rejects empirical scrutiny. They're fucking gone. They might shift of their own volition. They might hear an argument or be swayed over time, but not directly, not face to face. That does rule out West Bank settlers, though. Those people are 100% lost. I'm sure. I doubt that Mehdi would be willing to sit across from a West Bank settler, who was advocating for further expansion, because that person is fucking gone. Maybe in some edge case, but yeah. There's also a kind of there's a very particular internet brain poison compromised sort of nature to a person self-describing as a fascist, because historically, right, or at least over the past few decades, since the end of World War II, people who are fascist do not call themselves fascists, because fascism is not a popular ideology. The vast majority of the Trump administration is fascist. None of them call themselves fascists. So for you to call yourself a fascist, it suggests not only what you believe, but what you're willing to own. Different deal.
All right, let's keep going. Michael Connors says, I think this debate was a great opportunity to show everyone who these people are, who the Republican majority is. When you're in the midst of interviewing and debating people, how do you decide what to focus on, what to respond to, what to ignore? Another great question. These are great questions today, guys. Thanks.
You got to ignore 99% of the shit they say, because it's always a distraction. If you have a point, they are trying to move you off of it.
Yes, it definitely shows what the Republican Party has become and what it's becoming. I'm not saying the majority of Republican voters in this country are like the people in that room and surrounded. I'm not saying that. I am saying, though, a growing number of Republicans, especially young Republicans, do subscribe to an openly fascist white supremacist ideology. I do believe the Republican Party is at best a white supremacist adjacent party, and at worst now a hardcore white supremacist party at its core. And we need to be open about that and look at who's supporting Trump and who's radicalizing online. In terms of Michael's question about what to focus on, what to respond to, I think you have to think about what is your goal. And I go into these things with very specific goals. Less is more. You cannot do everything. You cannot respond to every point. You cannot debunk every argument. But I think what you want to do is expose the key fallacies or contradictions at the heart of their arguments. So when I'm debating the young woman who says you can't be an American and an immigrant, and she says... And then she reveals that her parents are immigrants, but they're Americans, but I'm not. even though I'm an American immigrant. There, immediately that becomes my be all and end all. I'm focused on this core contradiction in her argument where it falls apart. And I think what many people, not just on the right, but politicians across the board, activists across the board, what they try and do when they debate or interview is distract, deflect, take you somewhere you don't want to go. My strength and a skill I've worked on, and I hope those of you who read the book, Win Every Argument, my book, will focus on, is stay focused. Don't be distracted. Don't go chasing shiny objects. Focus on what you want to focus on. Don't let someone pull you somewhere else.
One of the most common fascist debate tactics is to say so many things that are so audaciously wrong so quickly in succession that they hope to distract you from like the main thing they said, you know? You have to leave a lot on the table. And that always frustrated me after I would have debates. Back when I had debates, people would ask like, why didn't you debunk X? And the X they're referring to was like one of 270 incorrect things they said, and we barely had time in the conversation to get them to acknowledge the fact they were wrong about one, right? Like it's like, well, you can't do that. You can't go chasing them on every point. It's literally impossible. And they do it deliberately. They know they're wrong. They know they're lying to you. They're aware of this.
Whataboutism, deflection, ad hominem attacks, putting you on the defensive. Keep coming back to what you want to talk about. In the first debate, in the first claim that I made about Trump being pro-crime, I cited the January 6 pardons. And I didn't really budge from that. Yes, we talked about Epstein. We talked about some of the other pardons. But at its core, each person who came and sat in front of me, I said, do you support pardoning people who beat police officers? They don't want to answer that question. So you just have to keep re-asking it.
Why do they hold those beliefs if they know they're lying and wrong? Two reasons. One, because they're trying to test you. And two, because the idea that things can only be true if they're correct is not universally held. In fact, historically, that's not what people believed. People believed in things like spiritual truths. People believed in things that felt right on a gut level, but weren't backed by empirical data. It was really only the Renaissance and the popularization of the scientific method that introduced a way of thinking that was empirically driven. Obviously, humans have always like done things based on evidence, but there's a difference between responding to existing evidence and like basing your worldview only around that which can be proven by measurable data. That's not like the way humans typically operate. There's nothing about the way we're constructed that innately drives us to act that way. You know? Yeah, magical thinking is very common. So depending on a person's ideology, they might be varying degrees of comfortable with believing things that they don't think are true, or lying about things that they know that are not true and don't care about because they're doing it to spite you. It's just... Okay, the Enlightenment, not the Renaissance. Okay.
Anonymous person says, Mehdi, big fan, thank you, not related to your Jubilee debate. When will you debate Ben Shapiro? I have no idea if that will ever happen or whether he would ever agree to that. Nikki Saney asked, did you change anyone's mind? Not in that room, no, but I'm hoping people at home may have changed their mind. The last debate was actually quite an instructive one. The last claim, which the other guy, I think his name was Kai, brought forward was, he said we shouldn't have birthright citizenship. And we actually had quite a good, that was the only part of the show which was really substantive, good faith debate, no insults, no racism or open racism. We actually had a proper debate for 10 minutes, and I'm hoping I convinced people as to why birthright citizenship is important and should stay. Let's keep going. So many questions. Ty Ebright asks a good question. Why won't you debate a fascist? So I tried to explain this on the show, but I'll explain it now.
It's a good question. You know, I see how it contrasts, I guess, with my answer.
Now, fascists don't believe in debate. They don't believe in democracy. If you're a fascist, as we saw from Connor on Surrounded, you believe in using the democratic method of debate, discourse, free press, free media, elections, to take power and then get rid of all of that. So why would I help you do that? Why would I be your willing accomplice? There is no merit to debating a fascist because A, at the core of fascism is violence, not speech, not debate. B, at the core of fascism is a lack of respect for human dignity and human equality, and I refuse to debate anyone who doesn't see me as an equal. Why would I do that? And C, as I say, it's a strategic goal of them to use this stuff. Connor was very open about it. I said, why are you here? You don't even believe in the Constitution or the First Amendment. He said, I'm here.
That's kind of a lib answer. Yeah, of course, because liberalism, like fascism, is a rejection of liberalism, not of socialism. Yeah, like the contrast to fascism ideologically on a social and I guess sort of ideological level is liberalism, right? Fascism, the rejection of empiricism, of equal rights, of democracy. These are liberal concepts. Yeah, it is true that anyone who self-identifies as a fascist just does not believe in the concept of free and open debate. They just, by definitionally, they don't rely on it. All ideologies rely on violence, though. But there's a difference between an ideology relying on violence in the way that all necessarily must, in the sort of civilizational power play kind of way, and one that does not believe in the concept of discourse, right? Discourse for a fascist is always a tool. To a liberal, it can be instructive. Often liberals employ violence. Any ideology can. But to the fascist, it is always just a tool. I guess let me just put this in a way that any fascist watching might understand. You know the demons in Freerun, Beyond Journey's End? How they understand human language only to the extent that it allows them to deceive people? This is unironically how fascists feel about debate. They're unique in this, by the way. Liberals do believe in debate, even if they often, like, you know, it's just human nature, right? Like, just because liberalism entails sort of free discourse doesn't mean all liberals will believe in it or be receptive to it. But leftists do as well. God, all leftists do is talk. All they do is argue with each other. It's the only fucking thing they don't do anything useful. They don't do anything, like, politically valuable. They just yap and yap and yap. So, you know, right, like clearly in these environments these things are meaningful, but it is different to the way the fascists engage. If a fascist is going to be deconverted, right, sort of de-radicalized out of that ideology, it can't be done through like direct confrontation of the ideology because they don't believe in that. It's usually by challenging an emotional core, right? Like, for instance, why do fascists talk about the Great Replacement or white genocide? Because they don't have a trad wife. You know, they're upset about the fact that they're upset about their relationship with women, you know? Most of their beliefs come down to that. It's usually psychosexual in nature. It's overwhelmingly psychosexual. So by addressing an underlying core emotional problem, sometimes you can get these people to, like, move on. Also by changing their environment, right? Like, I think that if you take a person who's ideologically liberal, not just a regular day-by-day lib, but a person who is ideologically liberal. Let me think of somebody. Pete Buttigieg, sure. Somebody like Pete Buttigieg, like somebody who is a well-studied liberal, if you would prefer. And you took them, right, and you moved them from the world they live in right now into an overwhelmingly anti-liberal one. Let's say you took Pete Buttigieg and you moved them to a small conservative town. Or fuck, you moved them to Saudi Arabia. I don't care, right? Well, that would suck for Pete Buttigieg. but like, let's say you did that. I don't think that doing that would really change Pete Buttigieg's ideology. I don't think that being exposed to a new environment would, like, change his mind on issues. Because I think that his positions are largely formed by things he believes to be empirically true. Or at the very least, like, it's a well-developed worldview that relates to reality, right? Even if I disagree with a lot of the conclusions a liberal might draw, it is at least empirically driven. But if you take a fascist who's only a fascist because they're in the far-right Discord servers and they're on 4chan and they're on Twitter and they're surrounded by like a friend circle that enables them and they do vice signaling and they're always trying to maximize how far-right they sound to prove themselves to each other. If you took that person, cut them off from their existing environment and moved them into, like, I don't know, a New England like college town and just had them try to live a new life, I think like 9 times out of 10, eventually they would stop, because I think that their worldview wasn't determined empirically. I think that their worldview was determined by like a psychosexual social response where they're trying to conform to the expectations of their surroundings, and that if you remove them from those surroundings and you remove those like instigating factors, you would then they would change and they would become a better person. Does that make sense? It's the difference between an ideology that, at least in principle, can be motivated by a real reckoning with the world, with empiricism, and one which definitionally cannot. It's always psychosexual. It's always some kind of conditioning.
Because this is how we get our ideas across. They are using mainstream platforms to launder their talking points, to gain fake respectability and mainstreaming of themselves, all in order to destroy it all. Right? One election, one time. That's what Connor said. We'll have one election to choose the autocrat, to choose the General Franco figure, and that's it. And then we're done. So no, I won't debate such people. There's no value to debating such people because they're not good faith debaters. Somebody anonymous says, I appreciate you doing the debate. Thank you. Ed R says, thanks for being a strong, unapologetic voice. Appreciate it, Ed. I'll just keep going. Let's sign some questions. Joseph Perez asks, now that you did Jubilee, would you do it again? And would you recommend anyone to do it? That's a great question. Would I do it again? I don't know. I definitely am less likely to have done it again, given what I know now, because I didn't think I was going in to debate white supremacists and fascists. I thought I was debating ordinary Trump supporters, and I know many of you say that's a distinction without a difference. Ordinary Trump supporters are fascists and racist. Not all of them. Many of them are. But I didn't know they would be this extreme and this kind of organized. A lot of these people were not members of the public. They were online influencers. Yeah. And that's, that's not what I expected for sure. Would I recommend anyone else to do it? I guess it depends who that person is and what the topic is. Right now, probably not. But, Sam Cedar, who's, I don't think he'll mind me saying this, a very good friend of mine, he did a great job on Surrounded a few months ago. If you haven't watched it, that's also there.
Yeah, I think my point about respectability here, or the way you come across is different from your interlocutors, I think it's really reinforced by the fact that Sam Cedar and Mehdi Hasan got very different responses when they went on Jubilee relative to Destiny. Destiny's a good debater, right? It's not a matter of debunking the arguments. Destiny could trash any number of random, idiot right-leaning people who come on Jubilee, but by coming across as more of a online debate guy, I think that it recenters or frames the conversation as more of a like an ideological slap fight, and not like a respectable man stepping down to Jubilee and being disgusted by what he sees. That's totally like an optical perception thing. It's like, that's not really rooted in like debate skill or anything. It's rooted in other things like age and affect. Mehdi is also very openly ideological. No, that's what I mean. It's not rooted in, it's entirely a perceptive thing. I think it could genuinely be the difference of being 10 or 20 years older. Like it's not really rooted in like your actual beliefs. But I do think that it changes the way people perceive things. Do you think you could pull off that affect? Me? No. God, no. No. I'm like an internet. I'm a edgy internet guy. No. Of course not. Do you agree with him that Trump supporters aren't necessarily white supremacists and fascists? Of course, obviously. No, it's not 80 million people in this country who are all necessarily ideological white supremacists and fascists. They've all voted for a fascist, but things aren't always that simple.
And yeah, he said, look, it's worth doing it because it is worth reaching a new audience that you wouldn't otherwise reach. And it's worth exposing these people's arguments, the bankruptcy of their arguments.
Guys, I got some excellent baba ganoush yesterday and having it for breakfast. That's excellent. I'm really happy to hear that. Everyone loves baba ganoush.
So I don't know whether I'd recommend it to anyone. It depends who the person is and what the topic is and how they vet the audience next time, or the 20 debaters. Would I do it again? Probably not. Pam says, Pam Wesolowski says, how did you wash the racism and fascism off after the end of that? Yes, take a very long shower. As I said, I ate lots of ice cream. Ice cream is a solution for many things. How did you feel? How safe did you feel going into the interview? A little bit unsafe, which is why I took security with me and made sure there was security on set. Very unsafe at the end of the interview where we got the hell out of Dodge. People asked me, did you stand around to chat to people? No, I did not. I left and went to dinner. Let's keep going. Jeffrey Awirioboa, sorry for...
Super cool for Epstein. Super cool for Jubilee. Sorry, it's been the news for like 2 weeks now every day. It says a lot about Jubilee that an extremely seasoned and respectable political figure like Mehdi Hasan, or commentator, journalistic figure, whatever you prefer, would feel like he's at a sundown town after completing an episode over at their studio, Like that, it speaks so much about Jubilee that Mehdi Hasan, not some flighty little purple-haired 22-year-old internet TikToker or whatever, right? Mehdi Hasan would be like, nope, I need security and me to get the fuck out of there. It's disgusting, genuinely.
butchering your last name, says, I'm really well done on keeping your composure, which is hard for me. Sometimes I lose my composure quite quickly.
I heard,
so I was
Alec,
impressed
I heard.
with my own calmness on that day. I'm really curious to understand how you prepare for such a hostile engagement. Great question. So my preparation is to do lots of research. I have a great research team that helps me. I do my own research as well. But I try and prepare. I knew what my 4 claims were. It was about Trump's criminality, Trump's defying of the Constitution, the value of immigration, and ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And I prepped the hell out of all those 4 claims. My position is I want to know more about the argument. I want to know more about my opponent's argument than they do. I don't just want to know my argument. I need to know the other side of the argument. I need to know what they're going to say and when they're going to say it. And when they say it, I need to have my rebuttal ready. And so when baseball cap dude came and tried to have the economics discussion with me, what was interesting is he assumed I was quoting a paper from Giovanni Perry, which I wasn't. But that's where he messed up, because I wasn't. It was a totally different study that I'd brought to the table. But that's what I try and avoid doing.
I really like this part. I actually didn't see it. I saw some of the thing. I'll probably see the whole thing, especially now that I'm talking here. But I actually didn't see this economy. I saw there was a clip on Twitter that was a few minutes. I saw like 30 seconds of it. Kid was insufferable. I already kind of had a headache. I didn't want to watch it. I'll probably watch the whole thing soon.
Don't assume what your opponents are going to say. Know what they're going to say. Be bulletproof in your own arguments and in steel manning, not straw manning, steel manning your opponent's arguments.
You do have to steel man. This is also very important because the fascist loves their indignant fake outrage. If a fascist strawmans you, anyone who's on the left, a person on the left will go, I don't believe that. This is what I believe. But if you strawman a person on the right, they'll go, I can't believe you said I believe that. Is that what you think I believe? Ha 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 ha. Well, maybe I should just lie about you then. Like, they will jump on any perceived slight, like, even though they're so aggressively bad faith, they'll jump on any perceived slight and turn the entire debate into your failure. Right? You've committed a faux pas. Well, now the debate is about your faux pas. How could you possibly assume that, a person who self-identifies as a fascist who's concerned about demographic replacement and white genocide is a Nazi? Have I said anything about the Jews in it? Like, it's aggressively bad faith. So you have to make sure you only respond to stuff they explicitly state or force them to deal with what you've said.
And in the end, when you do that, you can never be too prepared. And what's interesting is I turned up and I didn't need to steel man their arguments because their arguments were so weak, or in many cases, they just didn't engage, right? I came with an argument about how Trump is defying the Constitution. I brought a bunch of evidence: the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 22nd Amendment, all of these ones he's violating. I had all my receipts. First guy was like, we don't care about the Constitution. I was like, oh.
Great.
Well, that's a very different debate to what I thought I was having. So sometimes you can prepare and then the other person's not even engaging. But preparation is key. Practice, practice, practice. And yeah, I watched a lot of Surrounded to try and understand how it's going to work, when they're going to come up, what the best use of time is. I had the moments that I'd prepared for kind of quote unquote mic drop moments, which I knew I wanted to make, and I had to keep an eye on the clock to make sure I didn't run out of time. So yes, don't leave stuff to chance. Don't try and wing things. Don't always be spontaneous. Spontaneity has its role, but be prepared for every engagement. Can't say it enough. That was Jeffrey. Joshua Richard says, what was the...
I feel like I'm content stealing a little bit too much here, and I've more or less made the points that I think are pertinent. So I'm going to leave the rest of this, the remaining 40% of it, I suppose, to anyone who's interested in watching. Though if you're not like watching Zateo's content on your own, I really think you're missing out, genuinely. Really, really, really good. Not stealing enough, got to pull a Hasan and walk away for a few minutes. How often does... Okay, I don't watch Hasan. How often does he actually do that? Like, I get needing to take a bathroom break now and again, but I feel like it's got to be like not that often, right? He does it constantly, not that often. Okay, gotcha. As always, thank you for the... Well, he also streams long enough that he takes a food break. I don't do that. I hate eating while streaming. It makes my mouth all gummy, and I just hate doing it, So I just stream during like a uninterrupted block, except for needing to pee. Can't do much about that. Why do Americans refuse to change the Constitution when it's so outdated? We just don't really have a conception of that in the United States, which is unfortunate. Anyway, yeah, God bless Mehdi Hasan, man. One of the best of us.